Okay, we are live.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Shanika Smith. I am standing in for Councilman Bo Hess. He's out for today. I'd like to welcome you all to our January 29th, 2026 remote meeting. All council committee members and staff are participating virtually. To help our audience follow along, I'll state each section of the agenda aloud. We are streaming live on the Virtual Engagement Hub, which is accessible through a Virtual Engagement Hub link on the front page of the city website. We also have the option for the public to listen live by phone by calling 855-925-2801, meeting code 11543. For those watching, good morning. For today's meeting, we also have the option for people to call in and comment live during the meeting. To call in and comment live, use the same number, 855-925-2801, meeting code 11543. Your phone will be muted and you will hear the meeting live. At this point, you will need to push *3 to enter the speaker queue. Now I'll introduce each one of the committee members and staff who are participating virtually. Assistant City Manager Jay Dundas is out of the office and unable to join today, and Councilmember Hess again is not joining today. Council and staff, as I call your name, give a quick hello. Vice Mayor Antoinette Mosley.
Good morning, everybody.
City Manager DK Wesley.
Good morning.
City Attorney Brad Branham.
Good morning, everyone.
Assistant City Manager Ben Woody.
Good morning.
Fire Chief Mike Case.
Good morning, everyone.
And Hillary Jones from the REST team.
Good morning.
Asheville Intern Police Chief Jackie Stepp.
Good morning, everybody.
Development Services Director Mark Matheny.
Good morning, all.
And Chris O'Brien, who is a Compliance Coordinator.
Good morning, everyone.
All right, good morning to each of you. First on the agenda, I'll need approval of the minutes from November 20th. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the minutes from November 20th as presented.
All right, I'll second, and I'll do a roll call vote for approval. Vice Mayor Antoinette?
Aye.
Myself, aye. The motion carries. And in this meeting, we do public comment off the top of our meeting. So is there anyone in the speaker queue for public comment?
One moment.
Okay.
We do have at least two people who are waiting in line to speak.
Okay, we'll do those two now.
Okay. Callers, I will announce the last four digits of your phone number and let you know you will have 3 minutes to speak, and I'll tell you when your time starts. One moment. Caller ending in 2500, you will have 3 minutes to speak. Your time starts now. Or once we've confirmed you're here. Caller ending in 2500. Your line is now open. Caller ending in 8780. Can you hear us? Your line is now open. I am not sure what's going on, but I'm going to ask for some technical backup.
Okay.
Would it be okay if we moved public comment to the end?
Absolutely.
Okay. Callers, if you can hear us, we will go back to public comment after we present our agenda items.
All right, with that being said, we'll move to the first item on the agenda. Let me move to the agenda. Okay, we have a quarterly update from Chief Mike Case, and this update is covering the REST team. It's information sharing only, no action needed. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I appreciate it. I always look forward to being able to
extol the virtues and what our AFD Rest team can do. It consists of eight persons that make a significant impact on our city. So, in order to give you the material direct from the source, I've asked Hillary Jones to prepare the report and present to you. So, with that said, I'll turn it over to Hillary.
Hi, everyone. I'm Hillary Jones, a program manager for the AFD Rest team. There are slides, but I don't know if they're getting,
I'm happy to pull them up. I was under the impression you would be. My apologies. One moment.
that's right.
And while we wait, who's with you, Hillary?
Oh, this is,
Lieutenant Fordberry, Fire Department. How you doing, Council Mosley?
Good. Always good to see you.
Good to see you.
all right. So with this first slide is the AFD Rest Response Protocol. And a very common question we get asked is, how do we reach the rest team? So I decided to provide that information here. The most efficient way to reach us is either the Asheville app or calling APD non-emergency and requesting the rest team, or also 911 dispatch is trained in knowing when to contact us. So that is another way that we can be reached. And then the third way is basically our proactive outreach. We find you. So that's how we were able to start having direct lines with businesses and neighborhood associations by our proactive outreach, so they know how to contact us. And depending on the need is how we respond under engagement actions over there on the right, where you can see a lot of what you'd expect from homeless outreach. One thing I would like to take to note here is just the providing gaps in services and then the jack of all trades and what that looks like. And I will use Winter Storm Fern as an example. So what that looks like for the rest team is we were able to upstaff and provide 24-hour coverage during the storm in order to help folks in those critical overnight hours where it was the coldest, making sure they're getting to shelter and that they can get the assistance they need. We also collaborated with Buncombe County in setting up and demobilizing the Red Cross shelters and the Hearts with Hands shelters. And a big piece of what we did as a rest team is there were around 80 folks at the shelter. And when it was closing, they didn't have a warm, safe place to sleep for the evening. So we went line by line with all the folks and made sure they each had a warm, safe bed to sleep in. We divided it over 2 days. So all those folks had somewhere to go that evening. Next slide, please.
And when you mentioned that you upstaffed, are you using firefighters or are you pure response?
Firefighters, and I don't know if you want to speak to that, TJ.
Sure. Yes, Ms. Smith, we use firefighters. I can give you an example. So Saturday night, it got extremely cold. Everybody felt it. We were able to get 2 subjects into Code Purple that we got dispatched for other emergencies, but one of our trucks had found 2 individuals that were out in between the hours of 11 o'clock and 4 a.m. We were able to get them into Code Purple. Otherwise, we wouldn't have upstaffed. We just wouldn't have had that gap to fill during that time. And on Saturday night into Sunday morning, all the way up to 6 a.m., we found 4 individuals who didn't make it to Code Purple through that night. I think the first one was at 1 o'clock, and about 6:30 a.m., we found the last one about 4 o'clock.
Thank you. Awesome work.
Next slide, please. This next slide just talks about our operations and who we are, what we do. We run 8:30 a.m. to 9 p.m., 7 days a week, 365 days a year. We have 2 rest vehicles running, which has 1 firefighter and 1 peer support specialist. Those are folks with lived experience. And they are based out of their vehicles. So they do proactive outreach all day and just able to give like service to everyone in the city of Asheville. As you can see to the right, it talks about who we are and the scope of work. One thing I'd just like to point out here under the scope of work is how we support other city departments and resource efficiency. So the REST team in July of 2024 officially became the first point of contact for anyone needing homeless assistance in the city of Asheville. In doing so, that took a lot of strain off the first response system because it can help keep Asheville Fire Department, Asheville Police Department vehicles in service. Some other places we collaborate is with, we work closely with the Homeless Strategy Division. Right now, we're working on creating a trauma-informed care training for City of Asheville employees. So that's coming, it's in the works. We also are on several COC work groups. One of them, an example of one of them is the Code Purple work group. So everything that you see going on with Code Purple and Winter Shelter, we help develop all that just by providing our expertise and insight and what we do boots on the grounds. We work closely with the sanitation department, helping them with their Purple Bag initiative, where we can give out purple bags to folks in encampments, and folks then could put their trash in there and put it at the side of the road and it'll get picked up. So just to really help with that sanitation aspect. And then we also collaborate with neighborhood services. So just provide insight and information into any homeless assistance needed in the area and how to problem solve around that. Next slide, please.
And while you're going to the next slide, you know, in our last council meeting, we had an update from the Downtown Improvement District. I'm just wondering.
Like, I was thinking the same thing. I don't know
Yeah.
what you're about to ask, but
Yeah, I was just wondering how closely you work with them. And before you even get to that, I'm so impressed by this and so happy about this. I can't even see straight. So yeah, what is the relationship like with the Downtown Improvement District? Ambassadors, please. Because I'm
I
going to ask,
I- I can actually jump in on that question. So I guess everybody knows Hayden that helps run that. So Hayden's office is right next to ours, and it's been a great relationship. It put more boots on the ground when she got the ambassadors, which daily we get calls from the ambassadors, Hayden, the other members there, and they tell us, hey, we have this issue, and they let us know about it before something small could turn into something big in front of for our business owners. You know, they might have somebody sleeping in front or maybe disturbing the business, so they're able to give us a call, and we're able to take care of that situation. So, and they do a great job cleaning up in the city. Like, it's amazing how much they're really working, pushing carts, like keeping the city clean. So couldn't say enough about them. And I would like to follow up on one part we were mentioning. We appreciate the being able to upstaff to 24 hours the other day during the storm and during these conditions. Like I told you, the 6 individuals we were able to find overnight without us being upstaffed and being able, they would have just stayed out there. There's not a resource really to help get them somewhere. You know, we're kind of it when it goes there. They can call the police department, but it's finding somebody to see them and let them know. And you know, we have the more resources. If y'all have any questions on that, like, I'd love to answer them.
okay, thanks.
Yeah, and just one other thing, another exciting thing about the Downtown Improvement District is Erica Waltemead, who works with them, is now on the board of the COC to help give her insight and perspective on businesses and homeless assistance and all those things. So it's pretty cool. It's a good working relationship. So, and this slide, it just shows our year-end data. Like I said, in July of 2024 is when the encampment response protocol was adopted that made the AFD REST team the first point of contact for any homeless assistance in the city. And you can see how those numbers play out through the Asheville app. We had 515 reports. And when we say keeps trucks in service, it's a call that we as the rest team went on instead of the fire department, so we could keep that truck in service. So a lot of times there'll be a subject down, and it might be somebody just sleeping on a sidewalk, and that's something that we can respond to, and then it'll help keep the Asheville Fire Department vehicle in service. So anyways, that results in 907 homeless response interventions. Like I said, just reducing the strain on the first response system, and then just shows that those 907 points of contact are the folks that we could give our undivided attention to get connected to appropriate resources for that long-term problem solving. And then below that is just a snapshot of our dashboard for the year and all the good works we've done with folks experiencing homelessness, and a link to our dashboard in real time for anyone interested. And then also just kind of a breakdown of what a day looks like for rest. Next slide, please. And then this last slide is just showing how AFD Rest supports businesses and neighborhood associations. So this is a snapshot for the year, broken down into quarters, but the first quarter we had 192 reports of different neighborhoods or businesses asking for help around certain issues they were having involving homeless issues. And then at the end of the year, we got it down to 129. So that's a 33% decrease in overall events. And then you can see how they're divided up into quarter. But through our proactive outreach and actually taking that time to assist people and getting connected to the right resources for that long-term problem solving, it's helping all those reports coming in stay down. And that's all I have. I'm open to any questions.
And do you take calls throughout the city, or is it just a certain area?
It's the city of Asheville. So are you familiar with the Asheville app?
Yeah.
So anybody that comes in through the, anybody that comes in through the Asheville app, and then we get different calls or we get dispatched, but yeah, it's within the city.
I would like to add, first off, you heard me say when Hillary started her discussion that these are 8 people that the fire department has to address a tremendous issue within our organization, and very successfully, mind you. But these 8 people originally were designed to staff one AFD Rest unit. Last fall, we were asked to add West Asheville to an area, and that is where you start seeing they were able to do it, but they're doing it with those same people, and it's a lot of extra work on them. So I think as the services expand and as we do more, we need to look at. I mean, these people are working multiple hours a day already. So, and then they're adding more on so that we can staff that second vehicle to have an impact. And you saw the data that Hillary showed. It did have an impact. It dropped our numbers down 30 some odd % by doing that. So, but it is not at the expense of these great members of the team working tremendous hours to make that happen over and above, the high hours firefighters are already working. So I just wanted that to be put out there as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Hillary. Thank you for all the work that you do. Excellent work. Councilwoman Mosley, any questions?
Not really. I always forget what REST stands for. So can you tell me again what REST stands for? I know who you are and what you do and how great you do what you do, but I always forget. So tell me.
It's the Resource Engagement Support Team.
All right, thank you. Thank you again.
Thank
We'll
you.
move to the next item on our agenda, and it is a quarterly update, and interim chief Jackie Stepp will be doing that presentation.
All right, good morning again, everybody. Remember, this is just information sharing only. It's a quarterly, but since we closed out 2025 and moving into 2026, just also want to kind of give you an overall annual view of crime in Asheville. So next slide, please. Since there's been a lot of conversations around districts, beats, substations, I just wanted to provide a quick overview of what the police districts look like and where those substations are. We have 7, and as you can see, they're really strategically placed to get to reach every corner of the city. If you noticed the Baker, that blue area, it's extra large. And we recognize that it's not ideal, but that's where we are with our current staffing levels. Back in 2020, that was broken into 2 districts. And we're working our way back to that. So just wanted to give you guys an overview, everybody, just of what the policing looks like, what the districts look like. The blue is South and East Asheville. So as you see, they've got to go all the way to the airport, all the way far east. So it's a very large district, and that's why it has 5 beats compared to the others who have 4. Next slide, please. Annual citywide violent crime. I think you probably heard me say this on the radio or other places, but we saw a 24% reduction in violent crime last year. And I say it again, but that is no small feat for any agency. Our goal annually is 5% at least. So we far exceeded that. But I want to take just a second to recognize really what that means. First of all, if you notice on this chart, which only goes back to 2021, but even since the last 10 years, our average has been around 600 violent crimes per year. So this is the first year that we were able to really break sub 500 violent crimes. And that is just such a huge deal. And I want to take just a second to say that's not a result of one factor by any means. Frankly, I think it's your support, the community support, whether that's compensation or stations or just you officers feel that support. It helps with our staffing. It helps us be able to recruit. So I think it's support, getting restaffed. It's the line level police officers who are responding. It's our investigators. It's our strategic use in technology, community partnerships, and probably most importantly, it's the residents who continue and are willing to step forward and partner and help us solve crime. So I just really think that this is a slide that not only the police department should be proud of, but really the community as a whole, because public safety takes the work of all of us. So I just want to take a second and highlight that. Next slide, please. And now we're going into the quarterly violent crime. So as you can see, there were reductions in every year with the exception of West, which had one more. However, I think, we recognize that comparing quarter 4 in 2025 to quarter 4 in 23 or in 2024 and 2025 is somewhat skewed because of the hurricane. But overall, we still saw a reduction in quarter 4 if you compare those 2025 quarter 4 to 2021 to 23's average. So I wanted to highlight that because I do think quarter 4 is a little bit skewed to compare data to in 2024. Next slide. Annual citywide property crime. We saw a 10% increase in quarter 4 2025. And overall, we saw a 10% increase. But as you can see, since 2021, we still see a 2% reduction in citywide property crime. I think a lot of the increase in 2024, again, was quarter 4's hurricane impacted a lot of that reporting. And then in 2025, as we continue to restaff, we are strongly encouraging folks to report crime. I think we fell off at a point where we weren't reporting as much larceny, shoplifting, but we have since changed our protocol and are responding and really encouraging businesses and residents to start reporting.
And is there a certain area where you see more property crime calls?
I'll show you next slide, and that'll break down the quarterly, and then that way you'll be able to see by district. So as you see, our southeast and West Asheville generally have more property, and you see that reflected in the quarter. Next slide. And then I want to talk a second about officer proactivity, because as you saw last year in public safety, when we did some of these charts, when you compare officer proactivity to overall crime, when proactivity is up, crime is down. When crime is up, proactivity is down. And sometimes when proactivity is down, it doesn't necessarily mean officers aren't working. It just means they don't have the time that they have now as we restaff to really focus on intentional, proactive efforts, which means, really self-initiating, not waiting on a call for service, but being out in the community, being out in the geographic areas that they're assigned, and trying to problem solve and do what they are supposed to do proactively. And this is what happens as we're able to restaff. And we saw a increase of almost 3,000 hours compared to last year. Next slide. And then this is just a breakdown in the proactivity quarter 4 2025 to quarter 4 2023 or 2024, excuse me.
I got something for you. It's a fine line between proactivity and profiling. How do you all keep it clean?
Well, remember, we have a lot of accountability on the police department side. We have a lot of policy, procedure. We have a integrity unit that is specifically designated to proactively review all of our camera footages to make sure that they don't identify any of that. There are a lot of checks and balances in place. If we have any type of use of force incident or anything like that, a supervisor is required to respond. That funnels through the entire chain of command. So I do believe that we have a lot of checks and balances with that, on top of reporting after every traffic stop, certain data that has to be reported, etc. Next slide. And then we've talked about, traffic collision data throughout the last few years. And while we did see a reduction in our fatalities last year, we had 23 fatalities 2024, and we saw 16 last year. I just want to show this to say we're still seeing an increase per year on our traffic collisions. And why I think that's important is because, remember, we have, and we've conducted presentations over the last probably 18 months about a civilian traffic crash program. So I just wanted to show this to say, as we mentioned a couple of public safety committees ago, that is a new budget request for this upcoming budget, and it'll be reviewed along with all other citywide budget requests. But I just, show this to say there still continues to be an increase in collisions.
Thank you for reminding us it's a budget request for that.
Yeah.
Sometimes we forget.
Next slide. So there's just some key takeaways. Violent crime decreased by 24%. And in that, remember, violent crime, part of that is homicide. And I want to make sure that I mention we had a 54% reduction in homicide. While I'd love to tell you 100%, it's just not reality. But when we're able to make a 54% reduction, that's the lowest homicide rate we've seen since 2017. So I think that really speaks volumes to the work that we are doing, our data-driven approach, not only to hotspot areas, but really being violent offender focused is why we're able to see those reductions. And again, I can't talk about community enough and how much they really help with public safety overall. Property crime increased by 10%, but again, we still see a 2% reduction over the last 5 years. And then in quarter 4, we saw fewer violent crimes, but property crime increased. And then traffic collisions, as I said, just continue to increase per year by 4% last year. Next slide. Any questions?
I don't have any questions. Vice Mayor, have any questions?
No real questions. I'm just heartened to see that violent crime especially has been reduced. I am a little bit still concerned about the property crime issue. Do we have any idea what has led to the increase in property crime?
Well, remember the 10%, sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
The 10% from 2024 to 2025, I think a lot of that was, we saw a reduction kind of in that last quarter because of the hurricane. But if you look overall, we're still trending down. We're still 2% lower than we were 2021. So we're still trending down. But I really do believe a lot of it is our intention in telling people to report, report, report. I mean, if you look at the outlets alone, they were underreporting by like 500. They were doing internal reporting, but they weren't doing police reporting. So we've kind of tied the knot with some of those bigger retail establishments to say, hey, the police are here. We need you to file. We're data driven. So I think a lot of that is just our intention in telling people to report.
Okay, I got you. Thank you.
And I remember a couple of years ago, there was another decrease in property crimes because you were telling folks to lock your doors and be a little more vigilant. So I think once communities are a lot more vigilant and you get that peer watch, then you see another dip in reduction.
Yeah, I absolutely think community engagement plays a big part in all criminal activity.
All right, thank you for your report. And we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, and that is a report on abandoned building ordinance update.
Terrific, thank you. I'm Mark Matheny, Director for Development Services. And on the meeting today, we've got Chris O'Brien, who's our compliance team manager. We're going to talk today about an abandoned building ordinance update. We've, with the great help of legal and Brad, we've established a potential ordinance change to our current wording. This creates a new spot within our ordinance that really gives us an additional tool to work with as we continue to monitor and work with property owners on the abandoned building that we have throughout the city. Next slide, please, Tali. Going to hit some key takeaways here. Of course, our compliance team regulates the unsafe building ordinance and minimum housing. It's important to remember through this presentation, but always, the compliance of the ordinance includes providing a safe or remediated building for the general public. Demolition isn't the only compliance option. A lot of times that's a center focus on people's minds, but a safe boarded or a building or fenced property or fenced building is also a matter of compliance, and that is really primarily our goal and has been for literally decades. I won't even say many years. On a good note, since 2023, the efforts of our compliance team have resulted in the demolition of 8 residential buildings that qualified for what we would expect to be called abandoned. Now, these demolitions occurred from either the current property owner that our team was working with, or that property owner sold the property and the new owners demoed that. But by being steadfast and keeping track of that, it has resulted in 8 demolitions of residential, which is a good program. The proposed ordinance provides an additional tool for the compliance team to pursue the building regulatory compliance process. This doesn't subvert, this doesn't change, this doesn't expedite. This is basically another piece that we would use to go through our regular building regulatory compliance process. And the last one is, if a specific program were of interest, if there was a fine interest to implement a real aggressive program, that would obviously require both human and financial resources. Next slide, please. I always like to give a little summary of what our compliance division entails, right? So the Development Services Department Compliance Division We have two major components. We have animal services, which is a 4-member team, and then our zoning and noise enforcement part of the compliance team, which also is 4 members. And the zoning enforcement side of things, as I mentioned in the key takeaways, they do minimum housing and unsafe buildings. They do the noise disturbance. They're responsible for short-term rental and homestay. They work with steep slopes, zoning and development ordinance regulations, junk and nuisance vehicles, lighting, accessory structures, and signs. And then since post TS Helene, they've also been part of the unsafe building and debris task group, working on the buildings that were affected by TS Helene. It's a good visual slide to identify the volume and the number of responsibilities that our team has. Next slide, please. I also always like to include a way to contact our compliance team. So this is a good slide that shows where you can get to their website. And of course, Asheville app's been used a couple times in this meeting so far. Please use the Asheville app if you want to do that. And then we can get the compliance email. And one of the reasons why this is important, because I think everybody should know how to access our compliance team, but also we're gonna show a map here coming up that talks about a building of our current inventory of what we're going to call abandoned buildings. And we're growing that inventory, right? We've narrowed it down in this conversation. For this presentation, we have about 30 buildings, but we certainly have more across the city. And we want to encourage people to also let us know. There may be one that's back in the woods that's around your neighborhood or in a commercial district that we just don't see all the time, and we may not have it on our radar. So if you are aware of them, please send them to us. We really want that help in building what our current inventory is, and that way we can really specialize in working on this program. Wrong word, program, right? So program we're going to talk about in our daily activities. How about that? Next slide, please. Once again, in a positive direction, since 2023, our compliance team, the efforts have resulted in demolition of 8 residential structures, and these demolitions were carried out by the current owners of the property or new owners that they sold the property to. Next slide, please. And so the ordinance update, we're going to jump into that right now. That authority for an ordinance is given in our general statutes. It's 160D 1201. And once we have that ordinance is going to give us, there's a lot of pieces to it, right? But it's going to give us an authority within that ordinance to do the duties that we need to do. And the purpose and the scope are really important aspects of it. So the authority, the purpose, and the scope are important aspects of this new ordinance. So next slide, please. It's important to have some terminology, right? So where do we come up with the word abandoned buildings? That originates in that statute, right? And we're going to see that statute in a second. So 160D 1201, which is the basis of this, establishes that term abandoned building. What we've found, we've had, I know you guys are receiving a fair amount of inquiries about this upcoming ordinance update, and we did a presentation at SIBO a couple of weeks ago. The term abandoned, as we talked to the community and business members, some of them thought that might be a little vague, right, and allow too broad of an interpretation of what might be an abandoned building and what might direct action toward that. And so we're going to use that word because that comes from the statute, but we also we have kind of a working set of words also, and we're open to a great word that anybody has. But derelict is a pretty good word. If you look in the Oxford Dictionary, it says in very poor condition as a result of disuse or neglect. And that pretty much defines the buildings that we're talking about that we really need to take an effort toward. And so I thought having a discussion in terminology was important here. So next slide, please. Okay, so we come into the general statute 160D 1201. And I dotted this because you're going to see all the wording in the next slide, right? So abandoned structure, a local government may by ordinance provide for basically creating this ordinance. And then the ordinance may provide for the repair, closing, or demolition of such structures pursuant to the same provisions and procedures that are prescribed by this article, which is 160D, basically A, closing demolition of dwellings found to be unfit for human habitation. This 160D 1201 has a part A and a part B. Part A is the dwelling. Part B basically just refers you back up to the rest of what A said. So next slide, please. And here's really the wording this is the wording what our ordinance would look like. This would be section 4-223, exercise of police powers and authority. The middle of this paragraph, literally right, but basically the majority of this paragraph comes right out of the general statute, out of 160D 1201. So the city council hereby finds and declares that the existence within the city of Asheville of abandoned structures which may result in health or safety hazards due to the attraction of insects or rodents, conditions creating a fire hazard, dangerous conditions constituting a threat to children, or frequent use by vagrants as living quarters in the absence of sanitary facilities. And that in such case, the public necessity shall exist to exercise the police powers of the city pursuant to Article 12 of 160D of the General Statutes of North Carolina, has now or hereafter amended to repair, close, or demolish such structures in accordance with the procedures herein provided. And so really the top and the bottom are how we, gives us the authority within the ordinance. The middle of that comes right out of the statute. So that wording is pulled right out of 160D 1201. Next slide, please. And as I mentioned earlier, the purpose and the scope are really important. As we're talking to business community leaders and community members, there's some concerns about how far do we reach with this new ordinance. And once again, the whole purpose of this is creating an extra tool for the work that our compliance team is already doing. So the purpose of this article is to authorize the remediation and prevention of a health or safety hazards posed by abandoned structures by empowering the city to take action to repair, close, or demolish such structures for the protection of the life, health, welfare, safety, and property of the general public. And then the scope, provision and scope are applicable to all structures existing and hereafter constructed within the city of Asheville that are abandoned structures necessitating, we're running into that again, right? Repair, closing, demolish to protect the public health, welfare, and safety. So, and that's really where that's the stretch. So there's much more to the ordinance itself, but really the rest of it really goes into the procedure part, right? It's how do we notify the owners? How do we have a hearing with the owners? How do we create an order of repair or close or demolish? What timelines? And so that the rest of the ordinance really gets into the details, which is not unsimilar to what we already have in our minimum housing and unsafe buildings. This one just helps work specifically for our compliance team.
So what is the difference between what we currently have and what's being proposed? And two, how is this paid for?
So I can answer two first.
Please.
Yeah, I'll certainly be able to answer both of them. But two, about how is this paid for? If we incorporate this, it's just an additional piece of what our team is already doing. It just gives us a better avenue of authorization to pursue these abandoned buildings. And so that's a long way of saying that it would be the same thing that we're already doing. Now it's the same process. And so we have the same number of buildings out there. We're going to work with the owners for the same duration. So we're not changing, we're not looking to modify the system that we already have in place. This just allows us in complicated times to access buildings that we don't have access to. And in complicated times, I mean, maybe there's an owner that's local that refuses to do something ultimately. And we don't really have that. We've had a lot of real success with all of our local ownership for many, many years. But also if we have buildings that just, there's buildings out there that don't even have owners anymore because the original owners passed away. They gave it to their heirs have passed away. And so this gives us more ability to do that beyond what we already have. So we do have different sections within our ordinance, but they're not as precise as this one is for our compliance team. We can have our, Brad's probably going to do this a lot better than I am. We have an unsafe building, so we can have our building inspectors go out there and post the building. And then we still follow that process our compliance team does. But I'm gonna let that Brad pick up from here.
Thank you, Mark. You make my job easier. That's an excellent question, Vice Mayor Mosley. Why this? How is this different than what we have right now? What we have right now is a pre-existing ordinance scheme, which is pretty good. It covers a lot of things and gives us the power to address many of the properties that would create nuisances for the public or safety issues. But we have a donut hole. We have currently on the books or via the statutes that we have in place right now the ability to go out and address buildings that essentially have building code violations. Okay, maybe there's a construction defect, maybe there is something that is a fire hazard because it doesn't meet fire code. That is a pretty broad category. We also have the ability, as Mark's already mentioned, under the same statute that he's quoting here today, to address abandoned residential properties. You don't have to do anything else there. Both of those are already covered. What we don't have covered right now is abandoned properties that have been long abandoned, that are not residential, and maybe don't have a building code specific violation. There are properties, believe it or not, that can be in very bad condition, but are just safe enough to not manifest a building code violation. As an example, maybe you've got a building that has been not a dwelling. We already have residential properties covered under our existing statutory allowances, but maybe you've got a building that's been abandoned for some time. And you have people that are breaking into that building. They're staying in there. They're doing illegal activity in there. They're starting fires. But when we address them, technically the building code may examine that property and say, it's structurally okay. You just have to put some plywood up. Well, what we see is that building owners might just continuously put plywood up again and again, but that doesn't stop the activity from reoccurring, and you have the same nuisance continuously affecting not just that building and the people who pass by it, but the surrounding properties as well. Many of the complaints we're getting are really from surrounding property owners saying that we've got a safety issue here. This is affecting our businesses, our property values. What this additional proposed ordinance would do is attempt to fill that donut hole, to say that, all right, we've covered properties that are a building code violation. We've got residential abandoned properties, but non-residential properties that are producing a very specific nuisance that's defined statutorily, but maybe are just good enough to not be a building code violation. We would have the ability to go in and ask those property owners to make sure those properties are safe, or to repair defects that are causing the nuisance. And in extreme cases, we have the ability to ask those to be demolished or even demolish them themselves if the property owner fails to do so.
So what I'm thinking of a couple of buildings in particular that I won't mention here. Is the real nuisance the fact that folks are trespassing?
That is one of the prescribed nuisances. And Mark read this out. It's actually listed in the statute what the requirements are in order for us to be able to have any power. And I'll read those again because this is not something we have any control over. This is defined at the state level. This is the definition provided by statute. It has to be an abandoned structure that is causing a health and safety hazard due to one or more of the following: attraction of insects or rodents, conditions creating a fire hazard, dangerous conditions constituting a threat to children, or frequent use by vagrants as living quarters in the absence of sanitary facilities. So that's it. That is the full universe of reasons why we could possibly utilize this authority. And that's because that's what's prescribed by statute.
Okay, agreed. Could we not, if the ordinance isn't changed, there's nothing we can do to remove trespassers,
Trespassers, yes.
vagrants?
Yeah, and that's a really good question. So when there's a trespass situation, two things are occurring. You've got, number one, a criminal offense going on because someone is on someone's property without having the right to do so. The issue that APD, who is the primary respondent to those sorts of things, has is we need the owner oftentimes to tell us that someone's trespassing. If someone's in a property, if it's being utilized, those things get reported very regularly. But with abandoned buildings, oftentimes you have an absent owner, or as Mark mentioned earlier, sometimes when properties go through wills or there's no wills and people pass away, sometimes it's very difficult to even know who the owner is or to find them. They may be out of the city or out of the state. So we may not have someone who can actually report those trespass situations except external parties who are saying people are in there. But an external party really doesn't have the ability to report and prosecute a trespass on another's property. So as I said, you've got two things going on. You've got something the owner, if we can find them, they can complain about and we can address. But you also have what's going on to the surrounding property, surrounding people in terms of what's happening. This actually gives us more authority to address those as a nuisance, which is not a criminal offense, but as a nuisance that we can address rather than the criminal offense of trespassing, which is really limited to the owner's ability to complain about.
Okay, thanks.
All right, Talia, next slide, please. As I mentioned earlier, we're building our current inventory list of abandoned buildings. We're at 16 residential, 14 commercial. And this count, what we're talking about right now, does not include TS Helene, which is roughly about 31 buildings. We have a whole nother program and system that's working on those. And our compliance team is with those that have been, and the 31 is the ones that have been determined to be unsafe buildings. And as we all know, everybody's working through their insurance platforms, through some government possible programs. So we're monitoring those and working with those the same, but we may find in a couple of years when all of that's given up that these do actually fall back into our current ongoing inventory. Next slide, please. We wanted to provide a map, and this is something as we were kind of developing this conversation, found a couple of pieces that we didn't already have, and a map was one of them. And so we've created our very rudimentary methods of creating maps, because that's the skills that we have. But as we build this inventory, and like I said, we've got 30 now, and so the 14 and 16 that I showed you on the previous slide, that's where these are mapped out at across the city. And as we get more, as we build this inventory and understand, have a better, stronger understanding of what we have throughout the city, we'll increase the bubbles or the points on this map. And next slide, please. Along with that, and I know, I'm sorry, it's super hard to read, but what we've done as well is created basically a risk assessment table. And the top pages are just kind of how we're evaluating, the top rows of the table, how we're evaluating each one. If you can kind of see all the way over to the right column, We've identified the duration of the condition that it's in. We identified the property condition first, the duration of that condition, any community engagement that's been part of that, whether it's neighbor complaints, whether there's been media coverage over it, whether the owner has been participating. The next one down identifies fire and police activity. And then we want to know what the project cost would be if we have a demolition contractor go out there and evaluate it for a demolition. But we might also be hiring a carpenter who would go out there and board it up because the owner chose not to do that or wasn't accessible. And so we're just evaluating kind of what that cost of the project would be. And then we end up with a total assessment score. And as we focus on, some of these projects, some of them are going to come to the top more than others, but some of them, this is going to help us identify which one is a more immediate hazard than the other. There's no possibility to go out there and clear all these out in any, there's just not a way to do that. But we can identify the more hazardous ones and keep working on those, keep working with the owners on those to prioritize how things are addressed. And just so you know, and we cut this off because I didn't want the actual addresses to be on here. Below this table is the whole inventory, right? These are all the rows of the addresses and the buildings that are on there.
I'll bring up an actual address just because we voted already to demolish it. 158?
158, yes,
South French Broad.
yes.
I think since the last time we had a conversation, there have been like 2 fires at that spot. I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around why we can't just move forward with that. I understand that there were some issues maybe related to asbestos or something, but again, I don't know. It seems once there have been 2 fires, you can literally see through it now.
And the good news on that front is we are, and I don't think we've penned it yet, but we actually are working with a local demolition contractor on that contract. We are literally every day having conversations about this and that. So we are very, very close to signing that contract with them, or they sign our contract, and having that 158 South French Broad finally removed. And
so are you saying then that we anticipate having that house demolished by spring?
I can't give the demo contractor's schedule yet until we know it, but I can tell you as soon as we know it, we can relay that information.
Okay.
And it will be, we anticipate that it's going to be sooner. Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Next slide, please. A part of what our compliance team has been working on, and will continue to work on, is certainly the coordination with other departments. The one you just gave, the 158, is a good example. There's a lot of times where there's an APD need. Asheville Fire certainly was on there. Unfortunately, we got to that point, and certainly working in tandem with sanitation departments, but also really building a connection, or we already have the relationship with air quality, but also through the homelessness services and maybe even HHS as needed. Great conversation about the REST team at the beginning, and there's times where those are going to overlap as well, and so we'll have that connection as well. Next slide, please, Talia. So we mentioned about the possibility of an actual program, right? And so this ordinance, these are 2 entirely separate pieces, right? So there's an ordinance that we'd really like to see come through. And then if there was the interest in creating an active and specific program, there's a way to do that. And I would just say very briefly, here's some things to consider. Is our current inventory, which we have and we're working on. I call this the curve and plateau of building demolition. So if we built a program and funded it and put people on it, then, you know, we have 30 plus already. So there would be a period of time where over probably 3 to 5 years, it would take to aggressively remove the abandoned buildings. And then it would plateau out, right? We would have just a couple that would stay on our inventory. And then over time, 1 or 2 would come back on and we would work on those. There is a significant program budget that would be involved with that. And then, of course, we'd have a subcontractor list of electricians, plumbers, fence companies, carpenters, and contractors. The lien process comes up a lot, so that would really be an aggressive part of an actual program. And then once again, the risk assessment table, which we're doing already, that wouldn't be an additional piece of the program. And next slide, please. So very, very briefly, in summary, we would have 2 additional staff positions. Those would equal about $150,000 city investment, right? They're not, that's including benefits and all of that, right? So that would be 2 staff positions. There'd be an administrative position and a zoning enforcement officer position. The demolition would, on our current inventory, we just took what we have right now, our current inventory of 30 buildings would be about $2.3 million. And how do we come up with that? We got a very, very rough estimate from a demo contractor who said, don't say my name and don't hold me to this, but we're just averaging a residential home to be demoed for $35,000 and a commercial one to be demoed for $125,000. So that's just real super rough, broad estimates. But if we were to do that and approach all of these 30 buildings that we have in our current inventory, that's already at $2.3 million. And we know we have more than 30.
What happens in instances where we're not the top lien holder and we've moved forward?
Yeah, that's we get kind of pennies on the dollar, I think is the easy way to say that. But if we do the demolition, we are really a secondary lien in that whole process. And certainly if I step out of line, Brad will help me with this. But there's a couple of different ways of programs that they look at lien recovery. And the one that we would look at primarily is just going in, demoing the property, then putting that lien basically for the value of the amount that we did on that, which would ultimately increase the value of the purchase value, right? Not value, but the purchase cost, because they'd have to cover the lien, then they'd have to cover the land. And if there was a mortgage lien or some other liens on there, we would, at the demolition aspect of it, we would really be a secondary lien. And so we would get kind of what's left.
Mark, if I can add to that a little bit, I think you've already mentioned this. So state statutes do allow us, if we had to go in and do the work, whether it's a demolition or if we had to go in and do major repairs, either one, we have the ability to recoup that in the form of a lien against the property. That lien per statute is inferior, meaning it only gets collected until only after prior liens or any tax liens were collected, but it's superior to any liens on the property that come about after that. In addition, and this is important, under the statute, we actually are not limited to applying a lien to this property, but we could actually apply the lien to any other properties owned by that particular owner within the jurisdiction. So if they own other properties, they're not able to keep those safe from any lien that we would have to impose on the property actually being addressed. So we do have a little more leeway. Again, these do not become, the primary lien on any property. They're inferior to other liens, but we're not limited to just the single property we're addressing.
And of course, the additional piece of that is we would have to bring the money forward first, right? So it would be an expense that right now is not a budgeted expense to demo the property and then put the lien on it.
So basically, in no instance would it be likely that the city would actually take over ownership.
I can think of no circumstances under this program alone where we would ever assume ownership. The statutes simply don't even give us that control. We are very particularly limited to being able to recover through a lien, which is similar to a mortgage, just for the amount that we've actually expended in having to do the work to either repair the property or to demolish it, and nothing else. And if we had to foreclose on the property, again, a very extreme circumstance, any money that's left over after what we would take to recoup just our cost still would go back to the original owner. So we're not even allowed to keep the additional proceeds. We would never take ownership of the property under just these circumstances.
So the primary goal, as you can see, this is taking me a minute to think through and really to even understand. The primary goal is to do one of two things. Either have, if we're speaking in a commercial sense, have the abandoned or poorly maintained property either demolished or repaired.
I would flip the two and say in 95% of cases, at least, we're just looking to make sure that it is repaired. And I would even maybe couch it in these terms. If it rises to the level of a nuisance, and not simply if it's in disrepair, if something's broken, that is not the standard. It's a much, much higher standard than that. If it comes all the way to the point of being a public safety and welfare nuisance, we would want this particular ordinance, along with the ones we already have, to be able to empower us to implore the owner or to force the owner in severe cases to fix the issue, to stop the nuisance. And in a very extreme case, that might include demolishing.
But what happens to the timeline if the property owner does not claim the property and does not respond to the notices?
That can happen. Mark can probably speak to how we would practically do that. I will say this is where in the statute and in the proposed ordinance, it flips from us being able to try to issue notices to the property owner, issue complaints, give them an opportunity to be heard on that, and us issuing orders to them to repair their own property, flipping to us taking it upon our own accord as a city to go in and do the work necessary to abate the issue. So, we've already talked about a house on French Broad. That would not apply under this because it's a dwelling. We already have all that authority. But if that was not a dwelling, if that was a building in that same circumstance, and we can't find the owner or the owner's unresponsive, this is when it would re-empower the city to do exactly what we're doing there, which is take it upon ourselves to go in and address that issue, to repair or to demolish a structure causing the nuisance.
And under this program, there is no way we can take the abandoned commercial properties and repurpose them for, let's just say, affordable housing.
That's a good question. Here's the best answer. Under the program in and of itself, it's not intended or structured to do that. But let me say that the city separately, but importantly, always has the authority of eminent domain, which allows you to take property if it is put to a public purpose. Now, the creation of affordable housing has long been recognized as a public purpose. So I'm not going to totally foreclose the prospect that you could not combine a situation where you have an abandoned, can't find the owner, nuisance property that maybe needs to be demolished with the city's authority to actually take that property. This ordinance in and of itself doesn't give us the right of ownership. It gives us the right of access and to redress. But you've got a separate authority that could always be utilized in those regard. As Mark mentioned earlier, there's a price tag to all of this. So obviously there's a financial component to consider as well.
Isn't there a process for nuisance abatement today? Would that apply to any of these circumstances potentially?
Yeah, really, this is part of the nuisance abatement spectrum of tools. This is one of the tools that falls under Mark's particular department and code enforcement. As I mentioned earlier, we're already empowered to deal with these sorts of nuisances, whether it is the abandoned property that was a dwelling, But this applies also to situations where you just have properties that maybe are collecting trash and junk, noxious odors, or it's become overgrown. All of that, depending upon the particular circumstances, is part of a broader set of tools that's all nuisance abatement. The reason that we're talking to you today is, I'll go back to my donut hole analogy. We found one particular hole where the General Assembly said, local governments, you can do this, just enact an ordinance, but we haven't enacted an ordinance for these particular properties. So we have one particular nuisance out there, which we don't quite have the tool for yet.
Thank you, Brad. And thank you for the questions. Good conversation. Talia, next slide, please. And then, of course, any activity is going to have advantages and disadvantages. I just wanted to kind of identify some disadvantages, unintended consequences. And once again, even with the ordinance and not the program, these buildings are generally going to be buildings that are in really, really rough shape, right? These are the kind of the end of the life of the functional life of the building. But so we've got some disadvantages. Certainly the initial upfront costs of the demolition, difficulty in recovering the funds, with the liens, certainly increasing the purchase cost, foreclosure complications if it's foreclosed by somebody else, by somebody who owns the note originally, and then the long duration for the lien recovery, because that doesn't come until the purchase is made, and it could be months, it could be years from when that property is purchased. There is the concept of the community and neighborhood character, where you could kind of sawtooth or gap lots that are between other ones, which still provide for weed and debris maintenance throughout time. Of course, every building has its own story, has its own character, whether it's the building itself or maybe the neighbors around the building certainly remember it for some reason. And then there's the displacement, obviously, of the people that some of this wording is for, are certainly going to move there. And once again, move to another location. There's a loss of housing and building inventory, which may be a minor effect just because of the condition of the buildings in the scenario that we're talking about on this. So next slide, Talia. And then back to our key takeaways. Once again, our compliance team controls basically and regulates our ordinances. They've done a good job since 2023. We've been able to track 8 buildings that were actually demoed through the owner, through their efforts, and encouraging the owners or the new owners to take care of that. We're just looking for an additional tool to help within our regulatory compliance process. And once again, compliance being a building that's safe to the general public, whether it's boarded or fenced, or on a controlled position. And then if a specific abandoned building program were to be enacted, that definitely comes with both human and financial costs, resources. So next slide, please. And that's what we have. Appreciate all the questions throughout there. Appreciate the conversation. Glad to continue the conversation or hear if it's interested to go to the next level, or if we still want to have the conversation and provide information. We're glad to continue that once today's presentation is over.
Thank you, Mark, for your presentation. Definitely lent to my understanding. For some reason, I have to sit and process everything around this ordinance for it to make sense. I think the action was to hear how this is developed and send it forward to council at our next meeting. But I believe since there is interest in getting some deeper understanding and probably adding Chair Hess to the conversation, we probably need to see this another time here at Public Safety before moving it forward. But I'll leave that discussion to the rest of the committee members. Vice Mayor, what do you think?
I'm in agreement with you, Council Member Smith. I'm still processing, and I don't want to move because inevitably other questions will come to mind after this meeting. And I would love to, at another point in time, go over questions that may come up with Brad. Because I still do have questions regarding the fiscal aspect, given the budget considerations we're facing.
All right, heard. Thank you for all the presentations on today. Let's go to public comment. Let's see if we can get those two folks that we missed before.
And we have one person on the line. One moment. Caller ending in 2500, if you are still hanging with us, your line is now open and you will have 3 minutes to speak. Are you there?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, we can. I'll start your time now. Thank you so much for your patience, and I apologize for the difficulties. Starting your time now.
Thank you. Good morning, Vice Mayor Mosley, Councilmember Smith, and staff. My name is Kendra Miller. I'm here because the public record at the last Public Safety Committee meeting about Springside Road does not match the reality on the ground. Staff previously stated that there were no reported safety concerns on Springside Road. At that time, residents were not aware that they needed to fill out an APD traffic form to report concerns, but they're now doing so. Within 1 week of that meeting, there were 3 traffic collisions in and around the school area, including a major wreck at the student entrance to TC Robertson, directly across from the newly approved development at 93 and 95 Springside Road. This is the same corridor where students walk without sidewalks, where school traffic backs up daily, and where development-related traffic is about to increase significantly. The absence of reports does not mean the absence of danger. It means that the city is missing critical documentation, and that gap is now being used to downplay very real risks. Springside Road is a school corridor serving Estes Elementary, Coons Intermediate, and Valley Springs Middle School, as well as TC Robertson High School. There are blind hills, curved, no sidewalks, and failing pedestrian infrastructure. Near misses are routine. Some collisions have already happened. When the City Council approved conditional zoning on August 26th, multiple council members stated that sidewalks and traffic calming would need to be prioritized. To date, that commitment has not been materialized into funding, a CIP adjustment, or a timeline. So today, I'm asking this committee to help close the gap between words and action. Here are 3 concrete steps. 1, advance the Springside Road sidewalk in the capital improvement program. This corridor is already identified in city plans. What is missing is prioritization. 2, complete the traffic calming process already initiated by the neighborhood on April 14, confirmed in September that it meets speed criteria, and as of November 5th, it's still awaiting AFC review. That process must be completed. And 3, work directly with Buncombe County to address school-related traffic patterns so that students and teachers are no longer being injured in preventable crashes around our schools. Public safety should not depend on whether a form was filled out or an email was answered. To second officer's step earlier, the collisions, the congestion, and near misses are happening now. Development approvals have guaranteed more traffic. Infrastructure must now follow. I ask you, what specific actions will you take to ensure that no child, parent, or teacher is seriously injured or killed around our schools? Thank you for your time and your responsibility to keep our community safe.
Thank you.
That's our only caller.
That's correct.
All right. I don't think we have anything else to cover unless staff or council members wanted to have final comments, but nothing said. Okay, meeting adjourned. See you all soon.